Every gardener you know is fighting for space, digging up lawns, building raised beds, spending hundreds on soil, fertilizer, irrigation, and pest control, praying the weather cooperates, praying the rabbits stay away, and waiting months, sometimes years, for a single harvest. Meanwhile, in a small dark closet inside my house, something extraordinary is happening every single week. Pounds of fresh, gourmet, restaurant-quality mushrooms, lion's mane, oyster, shiitake, king trumpet, varieties that sell for $20 to $40 a pound at specialty grocery stores, appearing in flush after flush after flush. No garden, no soil, no sunlight, no fertilizer, no pests, no weather, no waiting months. Harvest in 14 days. Repeat forever. This isn't theory. This is the exact method I've been using for over 3 years to produce more high-value mushrooms in 4 square feet of indoor space than most gardeners produce vegetables in an entire backyard. Documented, repeated, proven. And in the next few minutes, I'm handing you the complete system from spawn to harvest to perpetual flushes, so you can start producing your own endless gourmet supply starting today. If you've ever felt limited by your space, your climate, or your budget, this video was made for you. Hit that like button right now, subscribe if you haven't, and drop a comment telling me which mushroom variety you're most excited to grow first. I read every single one. Let's get into it. Here's what most people don't realize about mushrooms. They are not plants. They never were. Mushrooms are fungi, an entirely separate biological kingdom, and they operate by completely different rules than every vegetable, fruit, or herb you have ever tried to grow. Once you understand this single fact, everything about home growing changes. Plants need soil because soil holds the nutrients their roots extract. Mushrooms don't have roots. They have mycelium, a thread-like network that digests organic material directly. They don't need soil. Ever. Plants need sunlight to convert energy into growth through photosynthesis. Mushrooms don't photosynthesize. They convert pre-existing organic material into food. They don't need sunlight. Most varieties actively prefer darkness. Plants need outdoor space to breathe, develop, and produce. Mushrooms are happiest in small, controlled, humid environments, closets, cupboards, basements, even the corner of a kitchen counter. This is why mushrooms are the single most space-efficient, climate-independent, beginner-friendly food crop available to home growers anywhere in the world. A renter in a tiny apartment can produce more mushrooms than a homeowner with an acre of land. A gardener in Alaska can produce identical results to a gardener in Florida. The variables that wreck outdoor gardening, weather, soil quality, pests, season, sunlight, simply do not apply. The mushroom industry is currently worth over $79 billion globally in 2026, growing at nearly 10% per year, driven entirely by consumer demand for fresh, gourmet, and medicinal varieties that grocery stores can't keep on shelves. You are about to learn how to step inside that economy as a producer instead of a consumer. Let's get you set up. Here is exactly how to start, exactly what to buy, and exactly what to avoid. You have 3 sourcing options. Only one of them gives you a true endless supply. Option 1 is grow kits. A pre-inoculated block sealed in plastic, sold for $25 to $40 at most garden stores. Open the bag, mist daily, harvest in 2 weeks. They work perfectly once. Then the block is exhausted and you buy another one. This is the option the kit industry wants you to stay locked into forever. Skip it. Option 2 is liquid culture or grain spawn. This is the real entry point for endless supply. A small jar of live mycelium, typically $15 to $25, that you use to inoculate your own substrate at home. One jar produces multiple grow blocks. Each block produces multiple flushes. The math is dramatically in your favor. Option 3 is cloning from store-bought mushrooms. Yes, completely free. A fresh, uncooked oyster or lion's mane mushroom from a quality grocer contains living tissue you can clone into a new culture. Slightly more advanced, but the cost is zero. For your first round, I recommend option 2, grain spawn, from a reputable supplier with verified reviews. North Spore and Field and Forest are the 2 most consistent in North America. In the UK and Europe, look for Mushroom Mojo or Grow Cycle. For variety, start with blue oyster or pink oyster mushrooms. They are the most forgiving species, fruit within 10 to 14 days, tolerate temperature swings, and resist contamination better than any other variety. Once you have one successful run with oysters, you can scale into lion's mane, shiitake, or king trumpet with full confidence. Here is exactly what your setup needs to look like. And the good news, every single component fits inside the smallest closet, cupboard, or corner of your apartment. Mushrooms have 4 environmental requirements. Get these 4 right, and they grow. Get even one wrong, and your entire flush stalls or fails. There is no in-between, and there is no negotiation. Master these 4, master mushroom growing for life. Requirement 1, the container. Forget pots. Forget trays. Forget anything from a regular garden center. The container that produces the highest yielding home mushrooms is something most people already have in their kitchen. A clear plastic storage tote with a tight-fitting lid, between 40 and 80 liters in size. You drill 2-inch holes in the sides for fresh air exchange, line the bottom with damp perlite to maintain humidity, and you have a complete fruiting chamber. Total cost, about $15. This setup will outperform any commercial system on the market. For larger production, scale up by adding a second tote. Requirement 2, the substrate. This is what your mycelium will eat. 4 oyster mushrooms, your beginner variety. Pasteurized straw is the gold standard. You can also use hardwood sawdust pellets, soaked and broken down, which are sold cheaply at farm supply stores as horse bedding. For lion's mane, shiitake, and king trumpet, you'll graduate to supplemented hardwood sawdust mixed with wheat bran. Substrate is the single biggest variable that affects yield. Never compromise on it. Requirement 3, humidity. Mushrooms need 80 to 95% humidity to fruit properly. Below 70%, the caps dry out, crack, and stop forming. The damp perlite at the base of your tote does most of the humidity work passively. For extra control, mist the inside walls of the tote with clean water twice a day using a simple spray bottle. That's it. No fans. No humidifiers. No expensive equipment. Requirement 4, temperature. This is where your variety choice matters. Oyster mushrooms thrive between 18 degrees Celsius and 24 degrees Celsius, exactly normal indoor room temperature in most homes. Lion's mane prefers slightly cooler, around 18 degrees Celsius to 21 degrees Celsius. Shiitake and king trumpet do best in cooler basements between 13 degrees Celsius and 18 degrees Celsius. Match the variety to the room, not the room to the variety. What you do not need is just as important as what you do. You do not need grow lights. Mushrooms develop perfectly in low ambient light or darkness. You do not need soil. Substrate is not soil, and trying to use soil will introduce contamination immediately. You do not need fertilizer. The substrate contains everything the mycelium will ever consume. You do not need ventilation systems beyond the holes drilled in your tote. The total setup cost from scratch, tote, perlite, substrate, spray bottle, runs between $30 and $50. One investment. Endless production. That is the entire infrastructure your perpetual mushroom supply requires. Here is exactly how to inoculate it and trigger the first flush. Here is the exact 14-day process from inoculation to your first harvest. Each phase has one job. Hit each one cleanly, and your mycelium does the rest of the work for you. Phase 1, inoculation. Day 0. Pasteurize your substrate by soaking it in water heated to 70 degrees Celsius for 1 hour, then drain it until it feels damp but not dripping. While it's still warm, but not hot, mix in your grain spawn at a ratio of 1 part spawn to 10 parts substrate. Pack the mixture firmly into your fruiting tote, mist the surface lightly, close the lid, and walk away. Inoculation takes 15 minutes total. Cleanliness matters more than precision. Wash your hands. Wipe the tote with diluted bleach and work in a draft-free space. Phase 2, colonization. Days 1 through 10. This is where the magic happens behind the scenes. The mycelium spreads through the substrate, breaking it down and digesting it from the inside out. You will see white, web-like threads appearing across the surface within 4 to 7 days. Do not open the lid. Do not miss the substrate. Do not move the tote. Keep it in a stable room temperature, away from direct sunlight, and let it work undisturbed. The single biggest beginner mistake is impatience during this phase. The mycelium needs uninterrupted privacy to fully colonize. Phase 3, fruiting initiation. Days 10 through 12. Once the substrate is fully colonized, meaning it looks completely white, like a solid block of mycelium, you trigger fruiting. Open the tote lid and let fresh air circulate for 30 seconds. Mist the inside walls of the tote thoroughly with clean water. Close the lid loosely so air can exchange. Repeat this twice a day. Within 24 to 48 hours, tiny mushroom pins will appear on the surface, the first visible mushrooms beginning to form. This is the moment that tells you everything is working. Phase 4 Harvest. Days 13 through 14. The pins develop into full mushrooms within 36 to 48 hours of first appearing. Harvest the entire cluster when the caps begin to flatten or curl slightly upward at the edges, not before. Twist gently at the base to remove without damaging the mycelium underneath. Store immediately in a paper bag in the fridge. Eat fresh within 5 days. Here is the key technique most beginners completely miss. Almost every home grower harvests their first flush, looks at the spent block, and assumes the cycle is over. They throw the substrate in the compost bin and start a new batch. They've just thrown away 70% of their potential harvest. Here is the technique nobody tells beginners. After your first harvest, your mycelium is not finished, it is resting. And with one specific trigger, you can wake it up and pull a second flush, then a third, sometimes even a fourth, from the same block. The technique is called cold shocking the substrate. Within 24 hours of your first harvest, soak the entire substrate block in cold water, between 4 degrees Celsius and 10 degrees Celsius, for a full 12 hours. Use a clean container, weigh the block down with a plate so it stays submerged, and let it sit overnight in the refrigerator or a cold garage. After 12 hours, drain it thoroughly, return it to your fruiting tote, and resume misting twice daily. Within 7 to 10 days, an entirely new flush of mushrooms will appear, often larger than the first, sometimes more abundant. Repeat the cold shock after each harvest until the block stops responding, usually after the third or fourth flush. This single technique multiplies your yield from 1 flush to 4 flushes per block. It cuts your effective substrate cost by 75%. It transforms mushroom growing from a one-time project into a true endless supply system. And it is the exact reason the home growing channels selling you new kits every month never mention it. Here are the 4 problems every home mushroom grower will encounter at some point. Memorize these fixes now, and you will save yourself months of frustrated trial and error. Problem 1. Green or black mold on your substrate. This is contamination, and it kills more home mushroom projects than every other issue combined. Green mold is trichoderma. Black mold is usually aspergillus or rhizopus. Both spread fast and outcompete your mycelium. The fix is prevention, not treatment. Once contamination appears in more than 10% of the block, throw the entire substrate out. Do not try to save it. Going forward, pasteurize substrate longer, 90 minutes minimum. Sterilize your tote with diluted bleach before every batch, and never inoculate in a drafty room. Contamination is almost always airborne. Problem 2. Mycelium stops growing halfway through colonization. Stalled colonization usually means temperature stress or substrate moisture problems. If the substrate feels soggy when squeezed, drainage was insufficient before inoculation. If it feels dry and crumbly, you've lost humidity. The fix? Keep your fruiting tote in a stable room between 18 degrees Celsius and 24 degrees Celsius, away from heating vents and cold windows. Mist the tote walls, not the substrate, twice daily. Most stalled blocks recover within 5 to 7 days once conditions stabilize. Problem 3. Pins form but never develop into full mushrooms. This is called pin abortion, and it points to one of 2 issues: insufficient humidity or insufficient fresh air exchange. The fix? Open the tote lid for a full minute twice daily, mist the walls more thoroughly, and check that the perlite at the base of the tote is still damp. Top it up with water if it has dried. Most aborted pins recover within 48 hours of corrected conditions. Problem 4. First flush is tiny and disappointing. Small first flushes are almost always caused by substrate that wasn't fully colonized before fruiting was triggered. The fix? Patience. On your next batch, wait an additional 5 to 7 days after the substrate appears fully white before opening the lid for fruiting. The mycelium needs that buffer time to consolidate energy reserves. Larger first flushes always come from longer colonization periods. Solve these 4, and you will never lose another batch. Here is exactly how to harvest your mushrooms, and exactly how to turn one block into an endless self-multiplying production line that runs for as long as you want it to. The harvest itself. Timing is everything. Harvest your mushrooms when the caps just begin to flatten and curl slightly upward at the edges. Never before, never after. Harvest too early and you sacrifice 30 to 40% of the potential weight. Harvest too late and the caps drop spores everywhere. The mushrooms become bitter and the next flush is delayed. To harvest, twist the entire cluster gently at its base where it meets the substrate. Do not cut with a knife. Cutting leaves stem stubs that rot, attract bacteria, and contaminate the rest of the block. Twist, lift, done. The whole cluster comes away cleanly in one motion. Brush off any substrate clinging to the base with a clean dry brush. Place harvested mushrooms in a paper bag, never plastic, and refrigerate immediately. Fresh oysters, lion's mane, and shiitake hold for 5 to 7 days in proper storage. King trumpet holds for up to 10 days. Multiple flushes per block. This is where endless supply becomes real. After your first harvest, apply the cold shock technique we covered earlier, 12 hours submerged in cold water, then drained and returned to the fruiting tote. Within 7 to 10 days, a second flush appears. Repeat the cold shock after that harvest for a third flush. Most properly maintained blocks deliver 3 to 4 full flushes before the mycelium is exhausted. Total yield from a single $5 substrate block is typically 1 to 2 pounds of fresh mushrooms across all flushes. At retail prices, that's $30 to $80 of gourmet produce from one home setup. True propagation, cloning your own spawn forever. Here is the technique that takes you completely off the supplier grid permanently. Before your final flush, harvest one perfect, healthy mushroom and cut a small piece of clean inner stem tissue with a sterilized scalpel. Place that tissue onto a petri dish of agar, or directly into a jar of sterilized grain, and seal it. Within 7 to 14 days, that piece of tissue grows into a fully colonized mycelium culture. You have just created your own grain spawn from a mushroom you grew yourself. Use that spawn to inoculate your next substrate. Repeat indefinitely. This is the loop. Spawn produces mushrooms. Mushrooms produce spawn. The cycle never breaks. Your one-time $20 investment in starting culture becomes a permanent, free, self-replicating mushroom factory inside your home. That is what endless supply actually means. Not a marketing phrase, not a clever title. A genuine, indefinite, self-sustaining food production system that costs you almost nothing to run for the rest of your life. Here is your action step. Pick one variety, blue oyster or pink oyster. Order grain spawn this week and start your first 14-day cycle. Drop a comment below telling me which one you're starting with. I read every single comment and personally reply to as many as I can. If this video gave you a real path to food independence, share it with one person who needs it. Subscribe for the next breakdown. And if you want my exact starter kit, spawn, substrate, tote, sprayer, all bundled at a massive community discount, the link is pinned in the first comment.